Hello CraftDee Family, and welcome to another tutorial by She's So Crafty. For today's DIY projects, I've selected 10 of my favorite easy and inexpensive wood projects to create some fantastic home decor pieces. Now these include a variety of shelves, some planters, shutters, and wall decor pieces. Now this compilation will have a step-by-step instruction for each project and also styling ideas that I have used for my space. Now I'll be sure to include the link to the original tutorials for each one of the projects in the description box, as well as a simple supply list needed to make each one of them. Now before we start, I have to say, hey to all of my subscribers, and if you are a new visitor to my channel today, I hope you consider subscribing as well, and stick around to enjoy these crafts and all of the different ways that I'll show you how to style these in your space. So now, let's just jump right into all of these projects. We're going to need one 1x2, and you can get an 8-foot piece for about $1.79 at the Home Depot. We're also going to need 2 packs of the 1-gallon paint stir sticks for 98 cents from the Home Depot. Now there's a couple of ways you can put your frame together. You can put them together in a 90-degree angle as shown here, and this is all straight cuts. Now if you want to get a little fancy, you can make mitered corners here, and these are made at 45 degrees. You can do these with a miter saw or a miter box, but I will be showing you both ways today. Now for your straight cut frames, you're going to cut 2 pieces of the 1x2, and you're going to cut 2 at 15 inches. And then you're going to cut another 2 pieces of that 1x2 at 6 inches. Now if you choose to do the miter cut frame, you're going to cut 2 long miter cut sections, and you're going to cut these also at 15 inches. And then we're going to cut 2 smaller sections for the miter frame, and these will be 9 inches. Now keep in mind, when you cut mitered corners, the inch measurement is the measurement on the longest side of your miter cut. So now that we got everything cut, we're going to go ahead and stain our wood pieces. So I'm gathering up each one of my frames. Now to stain these, I'm going to be using my Jacobian stain by Minwax. This is one of my favorite stains. And so I'm going to go ahead and start staining the mitered frame. Now to stain this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stain the front of the frame, the top, and the bottom. There's no need to stain the back unless you really want to. And you don't want to stain those raw ends as well. So we're going to stain both of those little short end pieces, and then we're going to stain the longer pieces. We're going to stain these the same way. So now that all of our miter frame pieces are nice and stained, we're going to go ahead and stain our straight frame pieces, and we're going to do these slightly different. But for the shorter pieces, we are going to stain these the same way by just staining the surface and the top and bottom. There's no need to stain the back or either one of those ends. Now we're going to repeat this for the other shorter piece, and here are both of those stained, and now we're going to stain the longer piece. Now on this piece, we are going to stain the top, the sides, and each one of the ends, because the ends will be shown in the final project. And as you can see here, everything is all stained. So what I like to do is go across each one of my stained pieces with a paper towel just to remove any excess stain to help it dry a little quicker. Now while that does dry, we're going to take our paint stir sticks, and I'm going to cut off that curved handle portion on both packs. Now what you're going to be left with, you want a piece that's 8.5 inches for the piece that does not have the handle. Now we're going to be painting these, so go ahead and remove those from the packaging, and I'm choosing to paint these with my white chalk paint, but you could use white acrylic paint or even spray paint. Now you notice on your sticks, one side will have measurements and the other side will be blank. I'm just going to go ahead and start painting that blank side. Now all I'm going to do is to apply one nice coat of that chalk paint, making sure you get the top and bottom ridges, and make sure you could get almost to the edges. Now we're going to repeat this until all of the sticks are done, and here they are all painted, and just allow them to completely dry. So once the sticks are nice and dry, we are going to add some distressing. So go ahead and gather them all up, and we are going to add distressing along the top and the bottom edges. Now to do this, I'm going to be using some black acrylic paint. Now we're also going to grab a craft stick, because this is what I love to use for my technique. So I just cut one edge of that craft stick off to make it flat. I'm going to dip it in that black acrylic paint, and all I'm going to do is just drag it along the edge, and I think that this gives it the perfect amount of distressing, not too much and not too little. You could put as much as you like. So we're just going to repeat this process along the top and bottom edges of all 20 of those paint sticks. Now here is everything all nice and distressed, and you want to allow those to dry. So now that our frames are nice and dry, we can start assembling them, and we're going to start with our straight cut frame. So just put the long pieces on the top of the bottom, and we're going to sandwich in those shorter pieces as shown here. Now you could use wood hot glue, or you can use regular wood glue. It's all up to you, but I'm using wood hot glue since I will be following up with screws. So I'm just adding some wood glue to the end of that shorter pieces and bonding it to the inside edge of that longer piece. And then adding another strip of that wood hot glue at the bottom of those pieces, and then connecting that closing portion at the bottom. And here is our nice frame all put together and assembled. So now we're going to gather the pieces for our miter corner, and we're going to do this the same way. Our top and bottom pieces are the longest pieces, and then we're just going to place those mitered cornered edges on each end. Again, I am using my wood hot glue to join these together. You could use wood glue if you like. We're just going to join each side together and then add that last bottom piece in to close the frame in. And now we have a completed mitered cornered frame. Now the measurements I provided made sure that both frames are the exact same size, as you can see here. So no matter which one you choose, they will be the same size in the end. So now what we want to do is to secure our corners with screws. So I'm going to choose a screw that will work, and I'm choosing a number 6 2-inch wood screw for this project. Now I'm going to start by drilling some pilot holes into each corner to apply my screws. Now of course, if you have a pocket hole tool or a brad nailer, you could definitely use that as well. So I did use a 3/32 inch drill bit for this, and I'm just going to go ahead and apply my screws into each one of those pilot holes. Now you notice that the screws are a different color, and you could just touch those up with matching paint at the end if you desire. Now we're going to repeat this for our miter corner frame the same way, and now both frames are nice and secured with the screws. So now we're going to flip them over, and we're going to add hangers to the back. Now my favorite style hangers to use are these D-ring style hangers. I love these hangers, and they can hold a significant amount of weight, and they do come with their own screws. I'll link them in the description box. So I'm going to add one to each top corner of each one of the frames, and I'm going to place it near the top edge as shown here, and we're going to attach them with screws. Now to keep that hanger from moving while we try to apply it, I'm just going to put the tiniest bit of hot glue on the back of the frame to place that hanger piece in place, just to hold it there while we apply our screws. Now you don't need to drill pilot holes for this. These screws are fairly small. You just apply a gentle amount of pressure and it'll screw right in. As you see here, here is the hook nice and applied. Just repeat it for the other side. And now both hangers are set and ready to go. And now just add your hangers on the other frame. Now they will go up in the corner the same way. We just want to make sure it's not on that seam there, and we want to make sure that they're just evenly spaced apart. And here they are applied to our mitered frame. So now our frames are ready with our hanger hardware. Okay, so grab one of the frames, and now all of our paint sticks are nice and dry with our white color and distressing. Just go ahead and separate half of them, which is 10, and we're going to start applying them to the back of our frame. So I'm putting them with the paint side facing down, and I'm going to lay 10 across the opening on the back of the frame, and just go ahead and arrange them where they're evenly spaced apart. So now that we determined all of the spacing, we can now secure them into place. Now what I decided to do is to use my hot glue. I'm just going to run a bead along each side and then press it firmly into place, just making sure you maintain that evenness. Now you can lay your frame out on a grid mat if that will help, but I'm just kind of eyeballing the design here. Now you want to complete gluing each side down all the way down until all 10 of the sticks are secured. And here they are, all nice and secure. And if you flip it over, you will see on the front that they look nice and even. Now for a little bit of added security, I am following up with my staple gun. I'm just going to add a staple at the bottom of each one of those paint sticks and also along the top as shown here. And this just makes sure that those paint sticks will not budge and they will remain secure in place. Now you're going to repeat this for your other frame until both of them are nice and complete as shown here, and now you have a nice set. So now what we're going to do is put our hanger at the very top, and I'm using these little metal hooks here. You could get these from Walmart in a variety of colors and styles, and they're not too expensive for a large pack, but they come in handy for a lot of projects. Now before I apply my hook, I'm going to find the center at the top of my frame, and I'm going to mark it with my pencil, and then I'm going to take just a really small drill bit, smaller than the screw on the end of your hook, and just go in about halfway to that wood in the top. And then you can see I have just the smallest little hole there, and this will just help drill it in without splitting your wood. So you just go ahead and screw that into that hole until it's all the way flush. And here's our little hook in place. It's ready to go, and you'll be able to hang anything that you want on that hook. And now just repeat this process for the second frame, and here's the pair with both hooks in place. Okay, so we're just going to sit those frames to the side, and what I decided to hang on mine are these mason jars. I just grabbed these and I put some matte spray paint on them that is black, but you can hang any kind of jar or vase that you like. Now if you want these jars, they do have them here at the Dollar Tree, and you'll be able to use those for this project. Now I'm going to grab a couple pieces of ribbon, and this ribbon I did get from Amazon, and I'll link it in the description box below. But what I'm going to do is hook that ribbon around the hook. I'm laying my jar on my frame, and I'm kind of measuring how far I want my jar to be. Now once that ribbon falls on the side of the jar, just hold it in place, and I'm just going to use just the tiniest dot of hot glue just to hold that ribbon in place until I finish securing it. That way it doesn't slip out of that measurement I just made. And then I'm going to trim off all of that excess that goes below the rings of the mason jar. Now to secure it in place, all I'm going to do is put the screw lid right back on top of that ribbon, and that is nice and secure in place. You do not need to add anything else. When you screw the lid on, it does secure the ribbon and it hangs right in place. Now all you have to do is add your greenery of choice, and then you can hang these once you do your second one, and that is it for this really fun and easy project. And here is the set on display. Now I think that these make such a gorgeous pair of wood displays. Now I love all the detail in this piece, and the inexpensive wood really takes the stain and the paint very well. I really love the simplicity of the mason jars, but you can get super creative with decorative vases. You can use lanterns, small crates, or even wording or signs. And the subtle distressing of the wood make the slats really pop, and they look so great against that wood stain. You all have to let me know what you think about this project in the comments below. Now for this project, we'll need 2 of these 1x4 pieces of wood. Now these are about $3.78 at my Home Depot, but be sure to check your region's pricing. We'll also need 1 1x2, and this was $1.98, and these are both sold in 8-foot lengths. Now we're also going to need 1 pack of bamboo skewers from the Dollar Tree, and if you can't find them there, they are also available at Walmart in their camping section for 88 cents. Now to cut my wood pieces down to size, there's a couple of options. You can use a miter box and saw, and these are relatively inexpensive at most home improvement stores, and it ranges between $10 and $11. Now I have a Hitachi miter saw, which is now called a Metabo brand, and I love using this to cut all of my wood, and this model is very inexpensive, about $99 to $110. It's easy to use, and I'll link it in the description box below. Now there's a couple ways you can join your corners. You can join them at a 90-degree angle as shown here, which is the easiest way, or you can miter the corners at 45 degrees. Now I'm going to do 45 degrees for my project. So I'm going to cut my 1x2s with the 45-degree angle, 2 at 23 inches and 2 pieces at 21 inches. Now, if you do decide to do right angles, you're going to cut the shorter piece at 18 inches and the longer piece at 23 inches, 2 of them each. Now, for our 1x4s, I'm going to cut 4 at 23 inches and I'm going to cut 6 at 7 inches. Now, I'm going to start off by staining all of my pieces for this display. So I'm gathering up all my wood pieces, and I'm going to be using my Jacobian stain by Minwax. Now I have a fresh can today, so you guys know I am super excited. So what I'm going to do is I am going to be applying this with a cut off piece of towel. That's what I use to apply my stain, and I'm going to apply stain on all of the edges of the 1x2 except for those mitered corners. You do want to make sure you have a nice even coat and leave those mitered corners unstained because we will be adhering those later. Now we're going to complete this for all the remaining 1x2 mitered pieces, and now we're going to work on our shelf pieces. Now once we start with the shelf pieces, we do want to apply this to all of the edges of our shelf pieces, including the ends, and we just want to do this for all of those pieces, and we want to repeat this for all of the long pieces as well, and these will be our shelf supports, and let those dry. Now while those are drying, I'm just going to lay out some craft paper and grab my bamboo skewers. Now I am going to be using my Surebonder wood stick hot glue, and I'm going to be joining 2 of the skewers together and using some of these Dollar Tree clips to help hold them together as they dry. Now I just wanted to double up the thickness of the skewers because they will look better that way as panels, and I'm just applying a strip of hot glue in between the 2 skewers and then clipping them together as I go down, holding them in place while they dry. So after about a minute or so, it should be nice and dry, and you can remove your clips and then continue making these for the remainder of your skewers. And here are all of our double skewers all glued together and ready to go. Now you can choose to paint these black if you want to, and here's an example of what one looks like painted black, but for this project I decided to go ahead and stain these instead, and so I'm going to use that same cloth and just go ahead and apply that stain to the side that does not have the glue on it. You just want to apply a nice generous layer on there and just rub it into that bamboo until it takes the stain, and then just repeat this for all of your skewers until they are all nice and stained. Now you just want to let these completely dry. So now that our mitered pieces are nice and dry, we can start putting together our window frame. So our longer pieces will go on the side, and our shorter pieces will be crossing the top and the bottom. Now we just want to match up those corners, and I'm going to be using my Surebonder wood stick glue on the corners, but you could definitely use wood glue too if you like. It just takes a little longer to dry. So I'm just going to add some of my wood stick hot glue into that corner and hold it together until it bonds about a minute or so, and then add another bit of that glue on the other corner and press that into place as well. Now once those two corners are nice and bonded, just flip it around and add that last corner, closing up our frame and just adding that wood stick hot glue. Now if you are using wood glue, it'll take probably maybe an hour or so for that to set before you can handle it. Now I did mention that I will be screwing these together. That wood stick glue is only there to hold it temporarily, and I'm going to be using 6 1.5-inch wood screws, or number 6 1.5 wood screws. I'm going to drill a pilot hole into that corner, and I'm using a 3/32 inch pilot hole drill bit into that corner of the frame, and then I'm going to put one of my number 6 screws into that corner. Now there are other methods of you to do hidden and pocket hole screws if you have that method, but this is the easiest way for us beginners to do this project. So now what I'm going to do is on the back of the frame, I'm going to mark the placement of my skewers, and it's basically dividing it into 3 sections. So on this long side, I'm dividing it as 6 3/4 of an inch. And then on the short side, the sections will be 5 3/4 of an inch. Now I'm just going over all of my marks with a Sharpie so I can see them better when I start to apply my skewers. So now I'm going to grab one of my bamboo skewers and I'm going to lay it across the frame where those markings are and cut it down to size where it overlaps about 1/2 inch over each side. And then I'm just going to add some more of that wood stick hot glue on one side and then add it to the other, securing that piece across the side to side. And now I'm going to add a second skewer at that second marking, cutting it down and laying it there the same way I did as the first. And now your two skewers are there on the long sides, and we're just going to repeat this until we add the other 2 skewers the other way. Now once they're all secured into place and that glue dries, I'm just going to follow up with a staple gun, adding a couple staples in each one of those bamboo skewers just for a little bit of extra security. And here is what the frame looks like with everything secured into place. Now to hang this, I am going to be using some jute twine. Now you can use those D-rings if you like to, but I'm going to use some jute twine with knots tied on the end, and I'm going to apply that in the center and add 2 staples at each end of that jute twine right where that knot is. Now this is the perfect way to hang this lightweight frame, plus you don't need no special hardware, and it does hang nice and secure. Now we did apply those screws in the side, and we are going to kind of camouflage those in. So what I'm going to do is take some of this chocolate brown acrylic paint and some black acrylic paint, and I'm going to blend them together until I get a color close to my Jacobian stain. I'm just going to take a fine paintbrush and I'm going to start dabbing that color in the screw and around that screw, just kind of blending it in so it's not as apparent. Now all you got to do now is repeat this all the way around the frame, and you want to make sure you do 2 coats, letting them dry in between, and your frame is now ready. So now what we're going to do is move on to making our shelves, and all of our pieces are now dry. So for each of our shelves, we're going to need 3 of the shelf pieces, and we're going to need 2 of the long back support pieces. So I'm going to lay down those long support pieces down side by side, and to temporarily adhere them together, I am going to be using my wood stick hot glue, or you could use a wood glue to apply these together right down the center, and I'm just placing dots of glue down the center of the side. And then I'm going to press them together firmly until they glue firmly into place. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my shelves, and I want to put 3 shelves, placing them equally apart. And what I decided to do is place the bottom one about 2 inches up from the bottom, and my spacing of those are about 6.5 inches apart. You just want to make sure that 2-inch border is at the bottom. So now what I'm doing is taking my pencil and I'm just marking a line where the bottom of the shelf will be, so we'll know where to glue it into place to temporarily hold it while we work. And then I'm going to take my wood stick hot glue one more time, and I'm running a bead above the line right down the center where that wood plank will be adhered into place. You just want to press it firmly in there about a minute to make sure it's nice and secure, and you want to do this for all 3 of your shelves. Now, once all three of the shelves are secured together, we can flip it over and we're going to grab some painter's tape. And what we're going to do is we're going to run that painter's tape from the side of the frame over across the back to the other side in alignment to where that shelf sits, so we'll know where to drill our pilot holes for our shelf security. And we're going to do this for all three of our shelves. So the screws that I'll be using for this is a number 6, a 1 3/4 inch wood screws. Now I'm going to be again using my 3/32 inch drill bit, and I'm going to drill a hole in the center of each plank, right in the center of that painter's tape. Now if you've placed it correctly, it should be right in the center and go through the wood on the other side. So once that's done, we can go ahead and remove all of our painter's tape and we can start to apply those screws into place. Just carefully and slowly drill them into place. Make sure they are placed perfectly, and you want to do this for all 6 of your pilot holes. And you just check the other side and all of our shelves are nice and secure. So all we have to do now is to hang them, and all we have to do is add some of these D-rings if you like, but I'm going to stick with that Jute Twine. It's easily accessible and most people have this in their stash. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces with knots tied on the end, and I want to actually do a double staple on each end right above that knot. Now if you do one strand, your shelf could sway side to side, but I found that doing 2 loops will prevent your shelf from swaying and keep it more secure to hold your items on top. Now once you staple those 2 into place, this piece is ready to hang. Now all you have to do now is make your second shelf with your other pieces. So now we have our 2 shelves ready, and we also have our window. So all that's ready, it's ready to go and we can decorate. And here is our beautiful wood window and accent shelves all hung up and decorated. Now I absolutely love the look of this window with the bamboo accent panels. Now I think each of these side shelves makes the perfect companion to this piece. Now you can add an optional wreath to the center, or you can add wording if you like. And then just add all of the accessories of your choice to the shelves to complete the look. Now these can be used together or separate, and it's great in a living space or even a bathroom. Now even though I've given my special touch to these, there's never one as great as your own. Now if you're interested in any of the decorative pieces I've used in my staging, I'll be sure to link the tutorials and links to them in the description box for more details on how to make them. We're going to need one 1x2, and you can get these in an 8-foot piece, and they're about $1.79 at the Home Depot. You're also going to need some 1x4, and you can get an 8-foot size for about $3.79 at the Home Depot. Now we will need a few cuts of this wood stake. Now these are $1 from the garden section from Dollar General, or you can use tumbling tower blocks, but since I had some of this left over, I am going to use this in my project. Now we're going to get our wood cut, and I cut 4 pieces of my 1x2, and I cut them at 18 inches long. And then I cut another 4 pieces, and these pieces are 5 inches long. So I'm going to grab my grid mat and grab all of my wood pieces. Now I'm going to need 2 of the long pieces and 2 of the short pieces to form my frames. So I'm going to sandwich those 5-inch pieces in between the 2 18-inch pieces, and I am going to glue these together. Now you can use wood glue or you can use wood hot glue. It's up to you. Now I am following up with screws, so I'm just going to use my wood hot glue. So I'm going to glue each one of the 5-inch pieces on each one of the inside corners as shown here, and then I'm going to add the hot glue on the bottom of those 5-inch pieces and close it in with that last long piece. Now here is one of my frames all nice and completed. Now I am going to be adding screws, so I want to drill pilot holes. So again, using my 3/32 inch drill bit, I am just going to drill down into each one of the corners so I can apply my screws. Now the screws that I have decided to use for this, I wanted a long screw because it is going through the long side of the wood. So I'm going to be choosing a 2-inch wood screw. Now I'm just going to hand thread that in and insert one of those screws in each one of those corners where I made those pilot holes. And here is everything all nice and secure. As you can see, they're all flush to the wood and they're good to go. Now we're going to repeat this for the other frame, and now we have 2 completed frames. So now that we have this part done, we're going to have our 1x4 and we're going to cut 2 pieces at 18 inches. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our frame and we're going to grab that 18-inch piece and we are going to join it at the very bottom edge of that frame. Now I am going to be using my wood hot glue again. Again, this is a temporary hold. So I'm running a bead of wood hot glue and then placing that 18-inch 1x4 right at the bottom edge of the frame. And when it dries, you can see it's really strong, but we are going to back this up with support of screws as well. So in my screw box, I wanted a longer screw since we are supporting a shelf, so I'm choosing a 3-inch wood screw for this project. Now I am going to be drilling 3 holes, so you want to make sure when you drill through the back of the frame, you want to make sure you go through the actual shelf, and you should have a pretty good idea of the alignment if you have it glued perfectly in place. Now once you do drill your holes, you're just going to go ahead and insert all of your screws all the way in, making sure they go in absolutely straight so they don't poke out through either the top and bottom of the board on the other side. And now all 3 screws are in place and your shelf is nice and secure. And now you just repeat this process for your second shelf. Alright, so now we have 2 completed shelves all nice and built. So now you have an option of how you want to finish these, and you can of course stain or use Waverly Antique Wax. You can also paint, and you can use any chalk paint of your color choice, or you can paint with black acrylic. I originally wanted black acrylic, but as I worked through this, I decided to go with white chalk paint for my home decor. So I am going to go ahead and protect my working surface, gather up my paint, and get it ready to go. Now I'm going to just apply one nice thick coat of this chalk paint all over the front side and underneath my shelf. You just want to make sure you get in all those cracks and crevices, and here is what the one coat will look like. Now we're just going to repeat this for our second shelf and let these both completely sit to dry. Now once it's nice and dry, here they both are. The paint turned out perfect. Now I did want to add a little bit of light distressing to my frame, so I didn't want too much, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of my black acrylic paint to do this. Now I love to use this method. I love using my craft stick method. What I do is I take a craft stick, apply a little bit of that paint, and I just drag that craft stick along the edge. I just think this gives it the perfect amount of distressing without overdoing it. And here is what one of the shelves looks like. And I'm going to repeat this on my second shelf. And here are both shelves all nice and dry. So I'm going to take one of the shelves and turn it over to the back side, and we're going to start marking it out for our design we're going to put on the back. So I'm taking my ruler. Now the inside opening of this shelf is 15 inches. So I'm marking a mark every 3 inches. So I'll have 5 even sections marked across the top, and you want to repeat this or down on the bottom as well. Now, in order to see these a little better, I'm going to go ahead and take my X-Acto, my Sharpie, and I'm going to mark those marks with my Sharpie so I'll know where all the marks are. Now to make my design, I'm going to be using this irrigation tubing. Now if you've been following me for a while, you know I love to use this tubing in my design. Now this is made by Orbit, but they also have some by Rainbird. But what I love to do is I love to use this as wrought iron. The texture of it looks like wrought iron, so I love to use this in my project. So what I'm going to do is unwind a bit, and I'm going to cut some pieces at 7.5 inches. Now once it's done, I'm going to cut 10 of these tube pieces for each one of my frames. So now that we have all our tube pieces cut, we can start adding them to the frame. Now if you don't want to work with tube, you can definitely use the garden fence or whatever you may prefer. Now I'm going to bend these just a little so they curve, and I'm going to match up those ends with the little marks on the back. Now I'm overlapping the ends about 1/2 inch on each side, but I wanted them to curve to form a pattern. So I'm going to be overlapping them as shown here so they create a little pattern or design. And I'm securing these in place with the hot glue. Now we're just going to repeat this pattern all the way down the back of this display shelf, and you will see it all come together really easily. So now here I am applying that last piece in place, just making sure it's nice and overlapped, and now you've created a really beautiful design. Now to add a little bit more security, I am just going to go in and I'm going to staple the ends of that tubing all the way down the back side. Now here is what it looks like on the front, and I think it looks gorgeous. So as you can see, this sign protrudes a little off the back, so hanging can be tricky. So what I like to do to resolve this is I took some more of that garden stake, or you can use a couple of tumbling tower blocks stacked, and I'm going to add these to the back at the top and the bottom. Now what this does is bump it out from the wall just a little bit so the back of your pattern on here doesn't touch your wall and your shelf will sit nice and straight. So I'm just going to apply these bumpers in place with a little bit of that wood hot glue, and I'm going to apply one in each one of the corners on the back. And then to hang it, I didn't want to use the metal hooks because they wouldn't protrude far enough. I'm going to use this thick jute twine. So I'm taking a long piece and I'm going to tie a double knot in each end in between those two blocks. Now once you trim down all of the edges, you can secure this in place. Now I'm going to secure it on one side first. I'm going to take my staple gun and I'm going to apply 2 or 3 staples in that end, and then at the other end I'm going to make sure it's nice and even, leaving a little slack in the middle and applying 2 or 3 staples there. Now I'm going to add some staples in the middle here, but you want to make sure you have at least 2 nice loops, and you want to apply 2 or 3 staples there. So now you have 2 hanging loops, and this is important to keep your shelf nice and even. Now I'm going to do the same process with my second shelf, and here are both of my shelves all nice and completed. Now I'm just going to go in with my little paintbrush and remove all of those hot glue webs to get ready to put these on display. And now it's time to hang these up and enjoy them. Now I really think these turned out great. Now I absolutely love working with the tubing, and it really does look like wrought iron. And the subtle little distressing on the shelf is perfect, and it really gives the wood more character. Now we're going to need about 2 1/3 of a 1x4 pine wood furring strip from Lowe's, and I purchased these for $3.98, but be sure to check your regional pricing in your area. We're also going to need 5 of these metal hooks, and you can get these for about 25 cents each in bulk from Amazon. And as an option, I'm going to use 3 of these gold baskets from the Dollar Tree, and you could keep these gold or you can even paint them. And another option are these 3 black or white oval or square baskets that Dollar Tree also has available. Now the first thing I did is took my miter saw and made some straight cuts. I made 2 pieces at 33.5 inches. I cut 3 pieces at 31.5 inches. And then for the last cuts, I did take a smaller cut and I made 8 pieces at 5 inches. Now, the cut plan for this is in the description box to make sure you don't waste your wood. So now that all our wood is nice and cut, we are going to prepare to stain it. So go ahead and gather up all of your wood pieces. Now I'm choosing to stain with my favorite Jacobian stain by Mimwax, but you could also paint these at the end if you prefer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with my smaller pieces and I'm going to apply the stain on the front, back, and sides. Now I'm not going to stain the 2 end pieces because they won't be shown in the project, and so I'm going to stain it as shown here, and you can see I didn't stain those end pieces because we will be adding our adhesive to those points. So now you just want to continue and stain the rest of your 5-inch blocks the same way, and here are those all ready to go. So what I like to do is take a paper towel and kind of wipe off any extra stain that's on there, and this actually helps speed up the drying process. So now that those are all stained, I'm going to stain the larger pieces. Now for these, I am going to stain the 2 ends. So I'm just going to place an even coat of that stain all over the boards. And as you can see, everything is nice, fully and evenly covered on the piece. So you're going to repeat this for the remainder of your boards and then wipe those down as well. And once that's all done, you want to sit everything out to completely dry, and it should take 1 to 2 hours. So now that everything is nice and dry, we can start assembling our piece. So I'm grabbing 2 of the 33.5 inch pieces, which will be the top of our shelving unit. Now you're just going to line those up side by side because we will be joining these together to make one continuous piece. Now the reason I just didn't get a wider piece of wood is because it was more than double the cost of this wood, so this is the less expensive way and works just as well. So to bond these together, you can use some wood glue, which is the strongest option. Just allow the appropriate time to dry, but I am going to be using my wood hot glue for a quick bonding method since I will be following up this project with screws. Now to bond it, I am just going to take the adhesive of choice and I am going to apply some of the glue right there on the side of the piece, and then I'm going to firmly squeeze those together and lock it in place. And then I'm just going to flip the piece over, and then I'm going to run a bead of my glue right down the center seam just for a little bit of a reinforcement on my piece. And then once that dries, you have one solid piece of wood to work with. So go ahead and set this one to the side. So the next 2 pieces I'm working with are the 2 31.5 inch pieces. Now we are going to again bond these together with your adhesive of choice, and we are going to do this the same way we did for the first set of pieces. Now once the center is bonded, definitely remember to flip it over and add more adhesive in the seam. And then once that dries, we have our second solid piece of wood, which is the bottom of the shelf. So now we're going to work with those 5-inch pieces, and what we're going to do is couple these up until we get 4 sets. And once we have our 4 sets, bond those together right down the middle with your adhesive of choice, and now you can gather those up and sit those to the side. So we're going to start building our cabinet, so go ahead and grab your 31.5 inch piece to start. Now this is the bottom of the cabinet. So what are you going to do is you're going to grab all of your coupled 5-inch pieces and you're going to place them sitting up along that 31.5 inch piece. You want to space them evenly so it comes out to about 9 3/4 of an inch in between each one of those pieces to make 3 sections. So I'm taking my embossing tool and I'm kind of embossing a line in the wood so I'll know exactly where that wood piece sits before we adhere it to the wood. Now again, take your adhesive of choice and I'm going to add some at the bottom of that coupled 5-inch piece, and then place the first one right at the edge. You want to make sure it's nice and flush with the edge of the top piece of wood. And then just repeat this all the way down the piece until all of your pieces are secured with your adhesive. So now what we're going to do is prepare to drill our holes, but first we're going to use this little trick I love to use to make sure that I don't miss the wood when I drill through to other pieces. So you notice we have dividers here, so I'm using a piece of painter's tape and I'm just going to make a line right across the top of the shelf, making sure it's lined up with that plank of wood underneath. This way you know where your wood will sit right on top. You'll know where the plank will sit, so when you drill right through, it'll go into the wood and you won't miss it. So I am using a 7/16 inch drill bit, and I'm just going to start drilling my holes into the planks underneath that bottom shelf. So for the first one, I just can kind of eyeball it since I know where that wood is sitting, and I'm going to drill a pilot hole in the center of each plank going through the wood underneath. And then I'm moving over to the tape. So I'm going to drill in the center of the tape, and it goes directly into the wood plank because you marked it with the tape, and that way you know you won't miss it. And then we're just going to repeat this process all the way down the wood, making sure we drill into each one of the planks underneath. So now we need to select our screws for this piece, and what I decided to use was some number 8 1.5 inch wood screws. And now we can start applying our wood screws to each one of our pilot holes. We just want to carefully drill those in, just go slowly to make sure that they are nice and flush. Now as you can see, these screws kind of blend in pretty good since they have a brassy tone. And then we're just going to continue all the way down, making sure you remove your tape before you add all of your additional screws to the bottom of your bottom shelf piece. And here are all of my screws in place. You can see they are applied nice and flush to the wood and securing all of those 5-inch planks in place. So the next piece that we are going to be working with is we're going to grab that third 31.5 inch piece here, and this is going to be the piece that hangs down from the bottom shelf and holds all of our hooks. So we're just going to prop this on the back side of the bottom shelf as you see here. So I'm going to lay it down so you can see here. We're just going to lay that flush against the side where it'll hang down the back of the shelf. So what we're going to do is we are going to adhere this the same way with your adhesive of choice. Just grab it and add a line of glue along the side seam, and then press that where it's flush along the back side of the bottom of the shelf. You just want to hold it until that glue grabs on. So as you can see here, this is what it looks like. The lip kind of hangs down from the bottom of your shelf, and it's shown upside down here, but you guys can get the idea. So now I'm just using a couple containers that I had of paint just to prop this up since it now has that lip hanging off the bottom. I'm just going to prop the shelf up a little bit so I can secure that back lip onto the bottom of the shelf, and I'm going to secure this with the same wood screws, and I'm going to use my drill. Now I've changed out drills because my battery died in the other one, but I'm going to go ahead and drill 2 pilot holes at the bottom back side of the shelf to go into that back lip that holds those hooks. So I'm just going to do that all along through making 2 pilot holes in each one of those sections. And once all those pilot holes are drilled, we can go ahead and add our 1.5 inch wood screws in each one of those holes. And here are the screws all nice and applied, and you can see they'll go right into that back lip. So now whatever you may want to hang on those hooks, it'll be reinforced by all these screws in place on the top side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay the shelf on its side just to show you guys the orientation, because we are going to grab that 33.5 inch top, and as you can see, it's going to overlap about 1 inch on each side on this little shelving piece. So I'm showing this here on the right side and then rotating it over to the left side so you guys can get an idea. You do want to make sure when you do apply this, you want to make sure that it's nice and even and has an equal overhang on each side of your shelving unit. So as we did before, to adhere it, we're going to choose our adhesive of choice on the top of those 5-inch planks, and then we are going to add that top 33.5-inch piece on top to that glue. Now once it has set for a little while, this is what the shelf would look like. It's nice and adhered. Now we will be screwing this into place to make sure it's secure. We're going to screw it the same way. Now of course, if you have a pocket hole tool or a brad nailer to make your screws less visible, definitely use those tools, but I'm going to show you just the easy friendly way to do this so you don't have to worry about any specialized tools. And I'm just going to drill the screws in top after making my pilot holes. Now as you can see, we're screwing these in the same way we did for the underneath of this shelf, but these brassy screws do blend in fairly well. But if they are bothersome to you, you can definitely blend them in with a little acrylic paint and then seal them in place where they are less visible. Just do whatever method that you feel comfortable with. So here are all the screws in the top of the cabinet, all secured in place with the divider planks. And now your shelving unit is fully assembled. So now it's time to add those hooks at the bottom. So I'm going to grab these black hooks, and they are secured with 2 screws each. So I'm going to go ahead and place them along that back portion that hangs down, and you just want to space them as evenly as possible. Now once they're in the place that you want them to be, I'm just going to take my little embossing tool and I'm just making a poke mark right between those drill holes just so I know where to drill a small pilot hole for the screws. Now I'm just using a very small drill bit the size of the screws that came with my hooks, and I'm just going to make a small pilot hole where I'm going to drill those screws for my hooks. Now you don't want to go all the way through the wood since the screws aren't that long, and you don't want it poking through the back. So you just want to carefully drill about halfway through your wood. Now once your pilot holes are all drilled, and so you don't have to hold the hook in place while you apply it, I always like to put just a dab of hot glue on the back. This is not to secure it, but this is just to hold it in place while you're working on getting those screws in place. I find this very helpful in applying multiple pieces at a time. So I'm just going to dab the hot glue on the back of those for all of those hooks, and then I'm going to take those screws and then I'm just going to screw them in place. Now it is fairly easy to screw these in. These screws are fairly short, so you don't need much pressure from your drill, and you really don't want to get them really tight. You just want to drill them down until they are secured. So we have one of our hooks nice and secured here, and I'll give you a close-up. This is all it takes to secure these in place, and they look perfect. So now just repeat this until all of your hooks are nice and screwed in place, and here they all are ready to go. So now that we have those decorative hooks on, there's only one thing left to do to complete this project, and that is to secure the hanging hardware. Now, the hardware that I love to use for my cabinetry is the D-ring style hardware, and I get these from Amazon. I'll link them in the description box below. Now, I'm going to put one of these D-rings on the side of the cabinet as shown here. Again, just using a dab of hot glue to secure it and to screw it in place. Now, these D-rings are rated about about 20 pounds each. So that means that this cabinet can hold up 40 pounds with these D-rings without a problem, which will be plenty for my decor. Now these also come with screws that are self-drilling, so you don't need to use the drill for this. They're easily screwed in with a screwdriver. So there's one done, and now we're just gonna rotate it around until the second one is applied. And here's that second one right in place. Our hardware is now in place, and now you can flip this over, enjoy it, touch up if you need to, but all you have to do now is to hang and decorate it. And here is my beautiful shelf all hung up and on display. Now for this option, I've decorated it for a bath, and I added the gold Dollar Tree baskets to organize all of my bath accessories and essentials. And those hooks come in so handy to hang your towels, your scrubbers, or even loofahs. Now as you can see, the wood stain beautifully highlighted all the textures and grains of the wood, and it gives this storage piece such a high-end look. Now this piece can be used for different areas of your home too. One 1x4 from the Home Depot for about $4.48. Now you do want to make sure that you check your region's pricing, and these are sold in 8-foot lengths. Now I also need a 1/2-inch dowel from Walmart, and this was 97 cents. Now to cut these, you can use a miter box, and you can get these fairly cheap at most home improvement stores. And this comes with a saw and a box for cuts, and they range about $10 to $11. Now my personal saw is a miter saw, and it's a Hitachi brand, which is now named Metabo. I use this for all of my wood projects. It was about $99 when I bought it, and it's still around $100 on Amazon. So I do highly suggest this to use if you have the capability. So we're going to cut our wood now. We're going to cut one piece at 6 inches, one piece at 9 inches, and one piece at 12 inches. Now we're also going to cut our dowels at the same length at 6 inches, 9 inches, and 12 inches as well. Now we're also going to cut 6 pieces of smaller dowel at 1 1/4 inch piece. Now I'm going to be staining my shelf pieces with my Jacobian stain by Minwax. You just want to make sure that you cover these shelf pieces really nice and even. Now all the sides and edges of these pieces will be stained because they all will be exposed in the final project. So here's one piece all fully stained and ready to go. And now all you have to do is stain the remaining 2. And then once that's done, sit that outside to completely dry. So now we're going to work on our dowels while those dry. So we're going to grab up all of our 3 cuts and our little dowel pieces. Now I will be painting these with some black acrylic paint. Now with a brush, I'm just going to apply 1 to 2 coats of some paint on each one of my dowels. Now when you do apply the paint, you do want to make sure you get the very ends of the dowels as well, as these will be exposed in the final project. Now you want to continue to paint all of the dowels on all of the edges and let them sit to completely dry. So now our wood pieces are nice and dry, and we're ready to start assembling our shelf pieces. So we're going to grab those and all our dowels as well. So I'm going to start with the smaller 6-inch shelf first. So I've been grabbing 2 of those small little 1 1/4 inch dowels, and I'm going to be placing them on the shelf. Now I usually use my Surebonder wood stick hot glue, but I will be using a regular hot glue today. Since I did start this project early, I really had time for it to sit overnight, and I'd really love to use wood glue if I have time for it to sit and dry. So I'm using wood glue on this because I did want a nice solid finish, and I did have time to wait for it to dry overnight. So we're just going to place these about 1 inch from the edge and just wipe away any excess glue, and repeat this the same way on the 2 other shelves, placing those about 1 inch from the edge as well. Now once those little pieces are done, we can put our cross pieces on top. Now I'm just going to start by adding more of that wood glue on top of those little dowel pieces we just added. And then I'm going to take those corresponding cross pieces and place them on top of the dowels really nice and careful. So once those are in place, I am going to add some weight. So what I'm going to do is add 2 or 3 books on top and let them sit overnight to completely dry. So it's the next day and my pieces are nice and dry and solid. So now I decided to put some hanging pieces on there. Now this is going to be a fail right here, just a heads up. I thought that I could put some of these D-ring hooks on the backs of these shelves to hang them up, but I did decide to change my mind later, so just keep that in mind. I went ahead and I did apply one of them. They do come with little screws. I got these from Amazon and they're linked in the description box below. Now I did apply one of those D-ring hooks on the backs of the shelves with my screwdriver. Now when I did finally finish applying this, I did realize that this shelf would not hang level with these types of hangers, so I did have to go and figure out a plan B, and I took that D-ring off the back of this shelf. So I set those to the side, and what I did is I cut an additional piece of 1x4 at 18 inches that I had left over from the piece that I used. And then I went ahead and stained it the same color as the other shelves. Now this piece will be used as the support for my piece. And here it is, all nice and stained and dry and ready to work with. So I'm going to lay out my grid mat as a guide so I'll know how to apply my shelves to this support piece. So we're going to lay it with the back of this piece facing you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down and I'm going to make a mark every 6 inches, and this is going to mark the placement of my shelf. So I'm marking it at 6, 12, and 18. So I'm taking one of my shelves just to identify the width of the shelf, and I'm placing this on the line that I just marked, and I'm placing another line so I'll know the width of each shelf. Now I'm just highlighting it with a chalk marker right now just to show this is where I need to place my screw holes, and you can actually wipe this away when you're done. So we're going to flip it over now to the good side, and I'm just taping it to my mat so it doesn't shift. And we're going to start applying our shelves. Now this is where I'm going to figure out the placement, and this will be on that 6-inch line. So I'm just making the mark on this side as well. Now I will be using my Surebonder wood stick hot glue for this because this is just a temporary adhesion to hold it in place until I can screw these shelves in. So we're going to go ahead and place at the 6 mark, the 12 mark, and the 18 mark all the way down until all of the shelves are nice and dry and secured. So we're going to flip it over to the back, and now we can start drilling our pilot holes. Now I am going to be using some number 6 screws, so I am using a 3 32nd inch drill bit in my drill to drill pilot holes, making sure that I'm drilling down into the shelves. And now the screws I will be using, I am using a number 6 2-inch wood screws. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply each wood screw in place, just taking your time to apply them, making sure they're going nice and straight, because if they're straight, they'll go right into the wood and you don't have to worry about making any mistakes. So now that all 6 screws are in place, your shelves are nice and secure to that support board. So now I can finally add my favorite little D-rings. Now I can put them on the back of the support, and this is how they should be applied. Now I'm going to apply one in each top corner of that support board using those screws that come with it that are supplied, and then I can just hand screw these in. They don't need pilot holes because the screws are so small, so I'm just going to hand screw those in until they're both in place. And now all you have to do, dust off your shelf and hang it up and just decorate it. And here it is on display, all decorated. Now, I really love this cute little tiered shelf. Now, I'm so glad that I was able to save this design by adding the wood plank, and I actually love it even more. Now, you can place so many cute trinkets and decor on this shelf, and it would be perfect for a smaller space. And check it out, this shelf is also self-standing and can be used on a tabletop. Now, I love that this can be used to display items in 2 different ways. Now, this really makes me believe in Bob Ross's happy accidents theory. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I really hope that you all are enjoying these crafts so far, but I wanted to pop in really quick and let you all know that you could follow me on all of these platforms as She Sew CraftDee. So now let's jump right into that next DIY. Now for this project, we're going to need 2 1x2 pieces of wood, and you can purchase this at the Home Depot or Lowe's in 8-foot lengths for about $1.54, but be sure to check your local pricing. Now we'll also need 1 pack of these 1-gallon paint stir sticks for 98 cents, and we're going to need 1 black wire mesh wastebasket from the Dollar Tree, or you can use this gutter guard screening that you can get from your local home improvement store near the Rain Gutter Supplies. Now there's a couple ways that you can join the corners of your shutters, and you can join them here in a straight cut at a 90-degree angle, which is the easiest way. Your long piece will be 22.5 inches, and your shorter piece across the top will be 5.5 inches. Now, if you choose to join your corners in a miter, which I think looks a lot more high-end, your long piece will still need to be 22.5 inches, and your top piece will be 8.5 inches. Now, these measurements are based on the longest end of the wood cut. So I chose to go with the mitered corners for my piece, and I'll cut 4 pieces at 22.5 inches, 4 pieces at 8.5 inches, and I'll need 4 pieces that are cut straight at 5.5 inches. Now we're also going to take our paint sticks and cut those down. So I'm going to cut the handle off, and they'll be 9 inches. And then I'm going to cut that 9 inches in half, and you'll result 2 stacks at 4.5 inches long. So now I'm going to lay out all my pieces, which are my end pieces, all my paint sticks, all my center pieces, and I'm going to stain them with my Jacobian Stain by Minwax. Now I'm just going to take a rag, and I am actually going to be staining all the sides of my sticks. Now I usually only stain the sides and the back, but since this is a gift, I'm going to paint all of the sides except for the ends of these pieces. And then I'm going to stain the remainder of those long pieces. So the long pieces here are now stained, and then I'm going to stain my center pieces, my end pieces here, and then all of my paint stir stick pieces. So now that our pieces have sat out and dried for a few hours, we're ready to assemble our shelves. So for each shelf, we're going to need 2 of the long pieces, 2 of the center pieces, and 2 of the top mitered corners, and grab 10 pieces of those paint stir sticks. So I'm going to be using my grid mat as a guide to help lay everything out nice and even. So we want to start by laying out our 2 side pieces, making sure they're nice and even, and then grabbing my 2 end miter pieces. Now I'm just laying these out just to make sure everything fits okay. So once we determine that fit, we're going to grab those 2 end pieces, and we're going to start bonding each one of the miter cornered at the ends, just applying some Surebonder wood stick hot glue, and this is just going to temporarily hold it until we screw them into place. Now you can use wood glue as well, but just keep in mind it does take a little bit longer to dry. So now grab those 2 straight cut pieces that are 5.5 inches, and I want to place them approximately 4 inches down from the top piece. You want to make sure there is a 4-inch gap in between them. So once we get our 4-inch location, add some more of that Surebonder wood stick hot glue and press it in place against the frame at that 4-inch mark, and then we're going to repeat this on the other side. Now, once we bond that one in place, both of those are where they need to be. Now, here's a trick and tip. Cut these center pieces maybe about 1/4 of an inch longer, since they will vary on the fit, and it's better to cut them longer than shorter, and you can adjust them later. So now that those are in place, add a dab of that wood stick hot glue on top of the edges of the frame and those center pieces, and press the other side of the frame into place until everything is nice and secured. So here is my frame all initially bonded together. So now, like I mentioned before, we are going to screw these together. So for the corners of my frame, I am going to use some 1.5 inch wood screws. And then to attach those centers, we are going to be using some 2-inch wood screws. So what I'm going to do to apply these is I'm first going to drill pilot holes on all 4 corners of the frame where my screws will be inserted. And then I'm going to drill pilot holes through those centers as well. And so now we can finally secure the frame together. Go ahead and grab one of those 1.5 inch wood screws and place one in each corner of the frame. Now, once all 4 corners are nice and secured, we can do those center pieces with our 2-inch wood screws and just apply those in place the same way we did as our corners. So here is a shot of all of my screws into place, and you can see where they're placed. Now you can see them in the final project, but I will have a resolution to blend those in, and that will come later in this project. Okay, so now we're going to flip the frame over with the good side down and the back side facing you. And this is where we're going to start adding our paint stir sticks. So I am going to take those paint stir sticks and I'm going to grab 5 of those. And you want to make sure that the numbered or printed side is facing you, since this is the back side of the project. And you want to space them evenly in that top opening, leaving about 1/8 of an inch gap. Now to apply these, I'm just going to add some of that Surebonder wood stick hot glue on each end and then press it into place. I like to add the beginning one and the end one first, and then space all the middle ones out in, just making sure they're evenly spaced when you place the middle ones in place. And here they are, all bonded into place. So now I'm going to flip it around, and I am going to do the same thing on the opposite side, just making sure all of 5 of those paint stir sticks are evenly placed and secured. So now we're going to work on the center. Now, like I mentioned in the beginning, you can use a Dollar Tree wastebasket. You can take some wire clippers, you can cut off the bottom of the basket, cut off the ring of the basket, and then cut the mesh to fit inside the opening. For this project, I am going to be using this gutter guard screen. It's a really, really thick, durable mesh, and I'm going to use this to cover the inside. Now, it is 6 inches wide, so it will cover the opening in one cut. So I'm just going to roughly cut a piece that will fit inside and cover up that opening in my shutter. Now once you lay it out, you can go ahead and make any adjustments to the edges and make sure they're trimmed nice and neat. So once everything looks good, we can start bonding it to our frame, and I'm just going to apply some staples using my staple gun. Now, how I like to apply this is I first like to apply around the 4 corners. So I'm going to secure the 2 bottom corners first, and then I am going to tug and stretch it, just making sure it's laying completely flat, and then I'm going to add 2 staples at the top part as well. So now all we have to do is go around the completed frame. We are just going to go around, make sure that the staples are applied, 3 to 5 staples per side. You can just making sure you stretch it and make sure it's nice and smooth as you apply your staples. And here is my mesh insert all secured into place. So now what we're going to do, flip it over and we're going to add our hangers to the back. Now, as of late, my favorite hanger style are these D-ring style hangers, and they come with little screws with them, and you can get these in bulk from Amazon, less than $10 for about 100 of them, and I love to use these. So I'm just going to place one on each side of the top of the frame, and I want to make sure they're evenly placed, and then take my pencil and mark where the screw will be inserted. And then this wood is very soft. You don't really need a screw or a pilot hole. You could just screw it directly into the wood with a nice handheld screwdriver, and it'll go in nice and easy. And there you go. You have your 2 hangers in place. Now, if you don't want to use hangers, you certainly can use jute twine and staples, as I've done before, and it works just as well. So once that's done, we can go ahead and assemble our second shutter. And now we have our 2 shutters fully assembled and ready to hang. Now, before we hang them, I mentioned before, if you wanted to cover your screws and make them less apparent, you can cover them with acrylic paint. So I'm going to mix some chocolate brown with some black, and I'm going to blend it until it gets to a color very close to my Jacobean stain by Minwax. And all I'm going to do is take a fine paintbrush. I'm going to dab that acrylic paint on top of the screw and inside the grooves of the screw until it is all filled in. Now we want to complete this all the way around both frames, letting them dry and adding a second coat. And here they are, all fully covered. I think they look really great. Now you can add a third coat if you like, but I think this is a good way to hide your screws if you don't have specialty tools to make pocket holes or pocket screws. And when that's completely dry, you can hang up on display. So here is the final result of these shutter pieces, and I really love the way that this design turned out. Now the low-cost 1x2s paired with the paint sticks always works well together, and it looks so awesome when it gets stained. And making the corners with straight cuts is really great, but the mitered corners really give these a higher end look, which I absolutely love. Now this mesh middle adds an element of texture and also allows you more options to decorate, and I'll show you. So now to incorporate the options to hang and add decor to your shutters, I will show you just a few options. And for example, here is a metal planter from the Dollar Tree that we might want to hang. So all we're going to do is add something in the middle to hold it. Now, the most convenient way is to use one of these little screw hooks that you could get from any hardware store and screw it right into the top and the center, and that will hold just about anything that has a hanger. Or you can use some of these picture hanger hooks that Dollar Tree sells often, and you can add this to the center at the top as well. And this comes with nails as well to hammer that in. And of course you would need to probably add some acrylic paint to match your Jacobean stain so it doesn't stand out. Now you can also use a standard nail as well, and this is the option that I went with. Now another option, if you wanted to add a box or a crate to hang, this will actually hook directly to the mesh if you wanted to. Just take a couple of those picture hanger hooks that I mentioned before. You can place them upside down on the back of the crate, and you can hot glue those into place. Now these hooks, when hot glued onto your crate, box, or vase, will hook right into that mesh and they'll hold them in place. And that is also another great option. So here I've hung a few of these planters up, and I've gotten these from the Dollar Tree, and I think they look great. Now I think that these planters make a really nice accent to these shutters, and the metal and wood always look great together. Now of course you can place any kind of flowers or greenery inside that you like. Now another option are lights. Now I think that these would be perfect for spaces that need a little extra soft glow. Now I have used some greenery and fairy lights inside, but you can definitely leave off the greenery if you like. Now I do think this is so sweet and subtle, and definitely an option I would recommend. is my inspiration for this project today. Now, I love the modern look as well as those offset shelves that create so much visual appeal. Now, when this is decorated, I know it's a beautiful piece, but the $76 price was not so appealing. So I decided to create my own version, and I grabbed some inexpensive wood from the home improvement store to create this high-end project on a budget. Now for this project, we're going to need 1.5 pieces of 1x4 pieces of wood. Now these come in lengths of 8 feet and are very inexpensive at about $4.38 at Lowe's. Now the first thing we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and cut our first 2 pieces, and these will be cut at 27 inches. Now our second 2 pieces we are going to cut at 18 inches. Now our last pieces we are going to cut are 4, and we are going to cut these at a length of 12 inches. Now I used my electric miter saw to cut these, but most home improvement stores will cut these for you as well. So I'm going to start by protecting my work surface because I will be staining a couple pieces. Now I'm going to be staining only the 27-inch pieces with early American color stain. Now when applying stain to the boards, I'm going to do it on both sides and also both ends as well, since they will be showing in the project. Now when working with the stain, you just want to make sure you apply a nice even coat all over the board along all of the edges and making sure it's smooth over the whole board. Now here is one of my boards all nice and completely stained, and when that's done, you just want to make sure that you repeat this for your second board as well, and when they're both stained, let them sit out to completely dry. Now while those are drying, we want to grab our remaining boards. Now I'm going to use 1 of the 18-inch pieces, and I'm going to use 2 of the 12-inch pieces to make my shelving sets. So I'm going to lay that 18-inch piece down, and I'm going to be adding 1 of the 12-inch pieces on each side. Now I'm placing these at the very end on the top of those 18-inch boards. Now I am going to be using my wood hot glue to adhere these, but you could definitely use wood glue as well. It'll just take just a little bit more time to dry. Now I am going to apply 1 line of the wood hot glue along that top edge of the end of the board. Now keep in mind the wood hot glue I'm only using for a temporary bond because we will be following up with this with screws in place. So I'm going to place my 12-inch board on top of the 18-inch board and want to press and hold it in place for at least about 10 to 15 seconds until that glue dries. Now we're just going to repeat that on the other end, adding our wood glue bead right along that edge, and then we're going to place that 12-inch board in place. Now keep in mind when you place your boards right on top, make sure you wipe away any of that glue that oozes out of the seam, and therefore you'll have a nice clean finish on the ends. So now both of the 12-inch boards are bonded to the 18-inch board. Now this is what it looks like when I lie it down, and so now what we're going to do is we are going to apply screws to make sure everything is nice and secure into place. Now I'm going to be drilling pilot holes first, so I'm going to use my 7/64 inch drill bit, and I'm going to drill in through the 18-inch board into that 12-inch board. Now I'm kind of just eyeballing it to make sure it goes right into the board, but I want to make my pilot holes on each end at least 3/4 of an inch away from the edge so your wood does not split. So as you can see here, I have 2 pilot holes on one end, and you want to repeat that for the other end as well. Now once all of your pilot holes are drilled, it's time to get our hardware or our screws to secure it. So what I decided to go with is a number 8 2-inch wood screw for this project. So now we're just going to apply our screws into our pilot holes. I always like to kind of start by hand screwing it in just a little bit just to get it going, and then I'll use my drill to make sure it gets all the way in there nice and flush with the wood. Now here is one of those screws in place, and then you just want to repeat this all the way around until you have all 4 of your screws in the board, securing all of those 12-inch pieces in place. So now grab your other set of wood pieces and we're going to repeat this entire process. And now you should have 2 of your U-shaped shelf boards all assembled and ready to go. So now what we're going to do is we are going to be painting our shelf boards to match our inspiration piece. Now our inspiration piece had the shelf boards as a black, so I chose to go with this black acrylic paint. You could use any kind of black paint that you prefer or any stain that you like, but I'm going with black to match the inspiration piece. So when I paint this, I'm going to start on the inside and you want to go ahead and just apply a generous coat. Now this acrylic paint by Apple Barrel is really thick and I only really needed 1 coat to cover the boards. So here's the inside of that shelving unit, nice and painted. So now I'm going to paint the edges and the outsides as well. Now here is my entire piece all nice and painted. You see I have really good coverage with just 1 coat. And now I'm just going to repeat that process for the other shelf piece. And then once that one is all painted, you want it to sit to completely dry. So while those are drying, we're going to go ahead and grab our 27-inch boards and they should be nice and dry from the stain. Now what we need to do is we need to join these together to make the center support for our shelves. Now you could have bought a larger board to put in the center, but this was the less expensive way and it also is very effective. Now again, I am going to be using my wood hot glue to join these, but feel free to use regular wood glue if you prefer, but we will be following up with screws for this. So I'm just going to start by adding a bead of that wood hot glue right down the center of the side of the board, and I want to press both boards together. Now I do want to press it together firmly to make sure it gets a really tight bond. Then after about 15 to 20 seconds, it's nice and bonded. Then I'll flip it over to the back of the boards and I'm just going to run an additional bead of that wood hot glue right in the seam between those boards. And this is just for added security, just to make sure things stay together. So once that's applied, you could flip it back over to the right side and now we have 1 solid board to work with. So once that dries, everything is good to go and we could go ahead and grab our shelf pieces now that they are nice and dry. So to apply it, I'm first going to just rotate my center board around. I'm trying to get a good visual here so you guys can see exactly how I'm going to apply this. And you can see the open end of the shelf pieces will be aligned along the top edge and along the outside edge as shown. So once that's sitting right in place, I'm taking my pencil and I'm marking the top edge where that bottom part of the shelving lays and underneath that top portion. Now I'm just going to remove that shelf to the side and we're going to go ahead and bond this in place before screwing it in place. So I am going to be using my wood hot glue just to run a bead right along that top edge and also running a bead right below that pencil mark where I marked for the bottom shelf. And then I'm going to take my shelf piece and I want to carefully place it on the glue, making sure that the open ends are aligned with the edge of the center support bracket and press and hold it in place until it's bonded. So once it bonds, this is what it looks like. This is the top half of the shelf. And now we could just rotate the entire thing around and place the bottom half of the shelf on. So we're grabbing our other U-shaped piece and we are going to add it the same way as we did that first piece, making sure the top and the edge is aligned and then taking a pencil and marking the top edge of that bottom piece of the shelf. Then go ahead and add your adhesive, your glue, and we're going to add it along the top and along the line where we drew for the bottom support of the shelf. And then grab your other shelf piece and press and hold that one in place until it's bonded. Now once everything is bonded in place, you have one solid shelf piece, and this is what it looks like. You can see that the shelves are nice and staggered and offset just like our inspiration piece. So now what we're going to do is flip the entire thing over where the back side is facing you. Now we're going to work on applying our screws. So the first thing we want to do is I'm going to be using some painter's tape, and I'm going to use this as a guide so I'll know exactly where to apply my screws so they go through the back and into the shelf. Now I'm using the alignment of the shelf on both edges as a guide to place my tape down. So when I drill my pilot holes into the back of my shelf, I'll know it's going directly into the board and I'm not missing my mark. So again, I'm going to take my drill bit, 7/64 inch drill bit, and I am going to drill right in the center of the tape along that back side of the board. Now I'm going to drill in the middle of each one of those boards, just making sure that you go all the way down and make a deep enough hole for a 2-inch screw. Now I'm going to repeat that for each outside edge and both shelf pieces in the center. And then once all of your drill holes are drilled, you go ahead and grab some more of those number 8 2-inch wood screws to secure everything in place, and we're going to need 8 of these. So now you can remove your tape because you no longer need it as a guide, and we're going to start to apply our wood screws in all of our pilot holes. I just like to slowly start applying these in place and make sure they're absolutely straight going down into the wood shelf, and these should be super easy to apply. You always want to make sure you drill your pilot holes to make sure your wood doesn't split and that the screws will stay securely in place. So once you got those first 2 in, you are good to go. You just want to repeat this for the remaining 6. And as you can see, we have 2 on one outer edge. We have those 4 screws in the center for those shelf brackets, and we have the 2 at the very end. Now once you flip it over, you'll notice that your shelf is now nice and solid and screwed together. It is one solid piece, so now you can move on to the next step. So now I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to add my hanging hardware to the back. Now the hardware that I prefer to use for my heavier shelves are D-rings. Now D-rings have a heavier weight capacity, and I like to use 2 of these, and these go from 10 to 20 pounds a piece, and they come with some screws supplied with them, but they do hold a considerable amount of weight, so I love using these for my shelf projects. Now I'm going to place one of these D-rings at the top of that center support on the back of my shelf as shown here. Now to keep those D-rings from sliding around, what I like to do is just put a tiny dot of that hot glue on the back of it just to place it in place. Now this is in no way trying to adhere it into place. This is just to hold that piece in place while I apply my screws and to keep it from sliding around on the back. So now that both of those in place, we can start to apply our screws. Now these are fairly small screws in diameter, so you do not need to drill any pilot holes for these. I am simply going to use my ratcheting screwdriver to screw these all the way into the wood. And here's my D-ring all nice and secure in place, and just repeat adding the screw for the other one. And here they are, both ready to go and to hang your project. So check this out, you guys. The inspiration piece is on the left and my shelf design is on the right. What do you think? So here's my shelf design all decorated and displayed, and I love how this piece turned out. Now I decided to use an option with a bath or spa vibe since this piece has so many shelves to display with different items. And as you can see, there's lots of room for all kinds of goods, especially the taller items, which I absolutely love about this piece. Now here is my inspiration photo for this project today. Now I thought that this item was so stylish and it would fit perfectly into my space. But like most things that I love, I really didn't want to spend over $200 for something that I could possibly make. So I drafted out a plan to make my own version and then headed to my Dollar Tree and my home improvement store to grab up some supplies. Now for this project, we were going to need 2 hard side gift boxes from the Dollar Tree. Now I found these in the party section of the Dollar Tree, and there are so many sizes and designs to choose from. And the boxes that I used are 11¼ inches by 8 inches. Now we're also going to need 2 10-packs of the 1-gallon paint stir sticks from Lowe's for 98 cents. We're going to need 2 1x2 wood pieces from the Home Depot, and these are sold in 8-foot lengths for about $1.78 each, and we're going to need 1 2-pack of hinges for about $1.50. Okay, we're going to start off with those boxes. Go ahead and remove the lids and set those to the side, and we're going to work on the main boxes. Now the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put a coat of primer on the inside and outside of both of the boxes. Now once that does dry, we are going to actually paint it with our final coat, and we will be using some elephant gray acrylic paint for the color of our bins. I think this looks so much like cement, so I am going to use this color to replicate what the Pottery barn project looked like. So I'm just going to put some in the inside and just start spreading it around evenly. Now you want to do 1 to 2 coats, whatever your preference is, and you want to first do the insides of both of the boxes. Now once both sides are done and they're almost dry, you can go ahead and flip them over, and then we can paint the exterior as well. Now I'm going to be painting the bottoms of the boxes and also the sides. Just go ahead and apply a generous coat of that elephant gray spray paint, acrylic paint, and then just let that completely dry. Now while that dries, we're going to work on our wood. So we are going to have our wood cut, and we're going to cut 4 pieces at 23 inches. And we're also going to cut about 6 pieces, and we're going to cut these at 12 inches. Now, if you don't have a means to cut the wood, most home improvement stores will do this for you. So I'm going to go ahead and protect my work surface and grab my long and short pieces, and also unpackage those wood paint stir sticks. Now I usually would paint with my Jacobian Mim Wax stain, but it's a little bit too dark for my inspiration, so I am just going to use my Waverly Antique Wax, which is a little lighter. So I'm just going to add some to my cloth and then spread it on the cloth. Now I like to use a cloth to apply it because I'm applying the wax and removing it at the same time, but you can use a paintbrush or foam brush or whatever you feel you like. You just want to make sure that you remove a layer of the wax after you apply it. Now you're going to complete this for the entire stick, including both of the ends, and this is what the completed coverage will look like on one of your pieces. Now you're going to complete this for the remaining of your longer sticks, and here are all 4 of those completely done. Now for the 12-inch sticks, we are just going to stain them the same way, just making sure you get all the sides, including the ends, and here are all those done. And then we're going to stain our stir sticks as well, and we're going to get both sides and the ends of those. Now here are all of our sticks all nice and stained, and you want to let these dry for about a half an hour. Okay, so now that our sticks are all nice and dry, we can start putting together our shelf. So I'm going to grab 3 of the 12-inch sticks, and I'm going to grab 2 of those 23-inch sticks. Now this will make one side of our ladder style shelf. So I'm going to sit those long sticks up on the shorter side, and I want to space them apart about 12 inches, which is about the length of one of our shorter sticks. Now I'm going to place 3 of those sticks in between those 2 longer sticks. You're going to have one near the bottom, you're going to have one almost near the center, and then you're going to have one level with the top of the piece. Now I'm just messing around with the placement here, but my final decision on the placement ended up being 3 inches from the bottom on that first piece, and then the middle piece is 10 inches from that bottom piece. You just want to make sure there is a 10-inch gap between that, and then just apply that top piece. So once everything is in place, I am going to use my hot glue to actually temporarily secure it in place. Now you could definitely use wood glue, but I'm going to use hot glue because I will be making an adjustment later and I need it to be able to shift slightly. So I just want to put the tiniest bit of hot glue, just a small little bead on there, and then once that's on there, I'm going to apply it right back in place at that 3-inch mark. Now again, this is just for a temporary hold until we secure these with screws, so there's no need to put an excessive amount of glue. We're going to repeat this for that center one as well, just putting a dot of hot glue and then securing that one right there 10 inches apart from the first one, and then having that done on that last piece as well. Now you can add a generous amount to the last piece because this one will not need to be adjusted at the end, but we want to make sure it's nice and level with the top of your ladder rack. Now once all 3 of those pieces are on there, we can go ahead and apply glue to the other end and then apply the other side. And now this is all glued together. It holds together pretty well just with this temporary adhesion, but then we're going to go ahead and grab our other pieces and we're going to complete another side of the rack. Now I think the best way to get the exact frame and size is to actually lay the other pieces directly on top of the piece that you just made. This way there won't be any discrepancies between both pieces and the shelves will line up really even, and I'm just laying them right on top just like I did the first one, and then what I'm going to do is glue it all together. So here are our 2 pieces all nice and glued together and they're ready to be secured. So I broke out my hardware box and I wanted to choose some screws for this. So I'm going with the number 6 2-inch wood screw to place in the side of my rack. Now to apply these wood screws, I am going to be applying them right through the side of the rack all the way down and placing one everywhere a piece of wood intersects. Now of course, if you have more advanced power tools such as a pocket hole tool or a brad nailer, you can definitely use those, but this by far is the easiest way to do it, and since all of our hardware on this will be a brass color, the screws will blend in very well. So you want to drill one of those pilot holes at each one of those intersections on both sides of your ladder rack, and once your pilot holes are drilled, I am going to place in one of those wood screws in each one of those holes. Now I like to start by hand threading it in just to make sure it's nice and straight, and then I'm going to screw it in. Now note, when you do screw these in, you don't want to screw them all the way down and tight. We will make a slight adjustment towards the end, so you want to screw it almost down flush to the wood, but you want to leave just the tiniest gap there so you'll be able to make an adjustment. So here are all the screws in the side of the ladder rack on both sides, and now you're just going to grab your other piece and you are going to drill pilot holes in that one as well, and then place your screws to secure it. And here are both of our pieces with our screws in place, and now we could start to hook them together. So this is where our hinges come into play, so I'm going to go ahead and remove those from the packages. Now these hinges are 1.5 inch and they have a brassy tone to match our screws. So you can see you open up the hinge and then it forms an L shape, but then when you close it, it's flush together. Now what we're going to do when we join these together, we want to make sure the 2 flush sides are between the top of the ladder rack as shown here, with the hinge sticking out of the top. Now it's very important that you place it this way so your rack will function correctly. So I'm going to place each one of the hinges about 2.5 inches in from the sides. Now the side that you bond this to will be the inside of your ladder rack. So I'm going to just place one on each side, and then I am going to put a dot of hot glue. This is only to hold the hinge in the place that I want it until I can get it screwed into place. This is in no way securing the hinge in place. You're definitely going to need to screw these together. So you're just going to put a dot of hot glue on each side, secure one of the hinges on each side as shown here. So once those are adhered into place, you want to go ahead and grab the screws that came with your hinges, and you're going to apply 2 of the screws in those holes on your hinge on each side. Now you don't need to drill pilot holes to this. These screws are actually fairly small, so these will screw right into your wood and you don't have to worry about any splitting. So you want to repeat this for both sides until your hinge is nice and secure to one side of the rack. So now that that's done, you are going to grab the inside of your other rack at the top, and you're going to lay the other piece on top with the loose part of the hinge so you could connect it to the other side at the top as shown here. Now again, we are putting a dot of hot glue on the back of that hinge, and we are going to temporarily secure it in place on the inside of the other side of the rack, making sure that it's nice and even. Just press it in place until it grabs on. Then once it does grab on, go ahead and grab those screws that came with the hinges and screw them into place. And now your 2 sides of your rack are nice and secure, and you can see that the hinge functions flawlessly. And you can see the top of the hinge is on the top of the ladder rack, just like it's supposed to be. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm taking my ladder rack and I'm laying it on the side just to show you guys how I'm going to space this out. So what we want to do is open up the ladder rack looking like the letter A, and what we want to do is space it out with 11 inches between the inside of each leg. This is how wide your ladder rack will be. Now I'm laying it down for demonstration purposes, but to actually put this on, you want your ladder rack actually standing up for the best result. So I've stood mine up and I actually taped it to my mat and make sure it does not shift. So I have all the legs spaced out 11 inches standing up on my mat. Now, if you look inside, you'll see that those cross pieces are slanting inwards. This is why we did not screw our screws all the way in. So we can go ahead and adjust this. Now, all you have to do is just hand bend or hand turn those wood pieces until they are nice and flat. Now, to make sure that these are nice and flat, I'm taking my level and just making sure that everything is nice and even, and make any adjustments just by hand turning that wood. Now, once it is hand turned into place, you can go ahead and screw it in nice and tight, but you do want to make sure this is level. Now, you do want to do this for the top one as well. Just hand turn that wood. It should be easy to turn since you didn't screw it in all the way. And then once it is nice and turned and level, you can screw those sides in as well. Okay, once we secured everything in, we are going to grab our paint sticks. Now, for the bottom, we are going to lay those paint sticks with the numbered side down, and when we lay them across the bottom rails, we are going to rotate where the handle is. For each one, we're just going to rotate it in place. Now, these should fit perfectly across these 2 pieces of wood if you spaced it out 11 inches, and we're going to continue this all the way across until all 10 paint sticks are nice and spaced evenly as shown here. So now we're going to get ready to secure these. Now, you can use your wood stick hot glue if you want to, but I'm going to choose to use wood glue for this so I can make any adjustments to the slats as I add my pieces on. So I'm in the process of adding them now, and I'm just adding a line of that wood glue right on that wood, and then I'm pressing one of the paint sticks in place. Now, if your spacing gets a little wonky as you go, the wood glue will actually give you more working time to adjust it. That's why I chose to use wood glue. Now we're just going to repeat the same thing on the top, but when you put your paint stick on, you'll notice it is too long to go across, and this is where we will actually be cutting these paint sticks down. So what I did is line it up with one end and then take my pencil and then make a mark where the other end of the wood is. Now this ended up being about 7 inches for me, but I don't suggest you cut the wood beforehand just in case your wood varies in size. So what I did is stack all of my wood pieces up, taped them together, and took them out to my saw and sawed it out at 7 inches. And then for that raw end, I'm just taking the rag that I stained with my antique wax before, and I'm just going to stain the end of those pieces as well. And there they are, nice and stained and ready to go. So now all we have to do is just lay these out, making sure the numbered side is down, and then we're going to evenly space them and wood glue them into place the same way we did for that first level. And once they're all glued into place, here's what they look like. You want to let this sit for at least an hour or two so everything is bonded nice and secure. And here are my sticks all nice and bonded together, and here is the shelf. I love the slatted levels. I think it turned out really, really nice. Now here is the view from the side of the shelf as well. And you can see it's completely reversible, so you could show either side. And then for the Pottery Barn dupe, we have these little shelves. You're just going to sit these boxes right on top of the shelves for the dupe version. And now all you have to do is decorate. And here it is, you guys. Now I absolutely love how this shelf unit turned out. Now these ladder style shelves are so versatile, and the Pottery Barn didn't disappoint with their design. Now I love the idea of using these cement stone looking boxes to hold all of your trinkets and decor too. And this warm color of the wood is the perfect contrast to the containers. Now I love these boxes, and they're nice and deep to hold all kinds of items in your space. Now these were advertised as plant stands, but I just had to make this a multi-purpose piece. Now for my piece, I made the containers completely removable instead of fixed, and I added wood slats as another option to your two-tier shelf. Now I just love the spa-like vibes from this, and this version would be perfect for your bathroom. You guys have to be sure to let me know if you love this design. Project, we will need a 10 pack of these paint stir sticks from Lowe's or Home Depot for 98 cents. We'll also need 2 crates from the Dollar Tree, and you can use the closed or open slat style. Some tumbling tower blocks from the Dollar Tree. A waste basket from the Dollar Tree, or this gutter guard mesh from the Home Improvement store. We'll also need a 1x2 piece of wood from the Home Depot, and this cost $1.78, and these are sold in 8-foot lengths. Now, in order to join the pieces of the project, I am going to butt them up in a 90-degree angle, which is the easiest way to assemble this project. Now, if you prefer to have angled corners such as 45-degree miter corners, you can do that as well, as shown here, and you'll need a miter box or a miter saw to do this. Now, the only thing to remember is if you do decide to do miter corners, the top one is going to be 3 inches longer than specified in this DIY. Okay, so we're going to cut 2 pieces at 23 3/4 inches, and we're going to cut 4 pieces at 10 3/4 inches. Now for the paint stir sticks, we're going to be cutting those down as well. So let's go ahead and remove those from the package. Now we're going to put 5 sticks to the side, and for the other 5 sticks, we're just going to stack them up evenly, and we are going to mark them 9 inches on the side without the handle. Now once you have that 9-inch mark, we're going to go halfway down and mark 4.5 inches. So we'll have 2 cuts we need to make on the stack of sticks. And when you're done, you'll have 10 total 4.5-inch sticks. So now that everything is cut and ready, we're just going to protect our work surface and gather up all of our wood, and we are going to prepare to stain it. Then once we have all of our wood pieces and our crates, I am going to grab my stain, and I'm going to be using my Minwax Jacobian stain, which is one of my favorite stains. So I'm just going to grab my cloth, and I'm going to start by applying the stain to the larger wood pieces. Now when I do apply this with the stain, I am going to stain all of the sides of the wood, making sure I get a nice, good, even coat. Now you do also want to make sure that you get the end pieces of the wood as well, because they will be showing in the final project. Now here is one piece all stained, and you want to repeat this for the other long piece. Now once the long pieces are stained, we're going to do the 10 3/4 inch pieces, and the only difference in this one is we're not going to stain the ends on this one, so we can use the glue. Now once those are done, go ahead and stain all of your paint stir stick pieces, and then we can move on to those crates. Now you do want to make sure your stickers are all removed, and just go ahead and stain the inside and the outside of all the crates. Now some of these crates do have some manufactured glue marks on the inside. It's not a big deal. We'll go ahead and fix that in the end if you like, but we're just going to stain both of those crates, and when everything is done, we want to make sure everything dries for at least a couple of hours. So while those dry, we are going to grab our carpenter square and all of our tumbling tower blocks. So what we're going to do is we're going to lay out 6 in a row. We're going to be making 3 sets of 6 blocks. Now to join these together, I'm simply going to be using my wood stick hot glue, and I'm going to be joining them end to end. Now as I join them end to end, I want to make sure I wipe away any hot glue that oozes out of the seam, and just flip the set as it goes so it doesn't start to bow or curve. Now once you have that first one done, you just want to repeat it until you have 3 total pieces. Now these will need to be stained as well, so I'm going to go ahead and add a quick coat of stain to these with the same color, and then once they're stained, sit them out with the other pieces to completely dry. So here are all my pieces ready to go and nice and dry, and we can start assembling our piece. So I'm going to lay out my grid mat for guidance, and then I'm going to take my 2 longest pieces. I'm going to lay them across the mat horizontally, making sure they're even, and then place those 10 3/4 inch pieces in between them, the 2 pieces all the way down. Now for the first piece, what we're going to do is we are just going to hot glue that right into that corner. Now I will be using my wood stick hot glue for this. Now this is a temporary bond just to hold it into place until I screw these in place, but this holds it with a quick grab while I work. Now after that first one is done, we are going to space the next one down 3.5 inches. Now once we find that mark, go ahead and put some painter's tape there, so when you pick up your stick and add that wood glue on it, wood hot glue, we can go ahead and place it right back in place, making sure we don't miss our mark. Now once that bonds, take your ruler again, and we're going to go down 10 3/4 of an inch between that one and the next one. You want to go ahead and move your tape down and add glue to that one and place that one in place. And then once that's bonded, all you have to do is just go ahead and glue that hot one, that last one right in place. So now that all your sticks are bonded to the first side, all we have to do is connect the other side. So all you're going to do is lift up your frame and add hot glue to all those raw edges of those center pieces that you just added. And then when you lie it down, you want to connect that other end. Now you do want to do this kind of quickly, and use your ruler just to make sure all the spaces are even between them and match the other side, because there is about 5 to 10 seconds of working time with this glue. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drill some holes on the side of my frame for wood screws. Now, if you have something like a pocket hole tool or a brad nailer, you can definitely use those, but drilling into the side is really easy, and I'm using a 7/64 inch drill bit. So I'm just going to drill a hole in each side where the wood from the center intersects with the outside of the frame. Now once all my pilot holes are drilled, I am going to grab some screws, and for this project I'm going to be using some number 8 2-inch wood screws. So once we do have all our screws, we can go ahead and start applying them to the frame. Now I'm just hand threading them in, and I have my drill bit on my drill, and I'm just going to drill them down till they're nice and flush with the surface. And I want to do this all the way around the frame until your frame is assembled and nice and strong. So now we're going to flip our frame with the good side facing down. We're going to start to add all of our 4.5-inch pieces from our paint stir sticks, and we're going to apply them to the smallest 3.5-inch open area. We just want to lay them side by side all the way across, and we want to make sure that the measurement side is facing you since the good side is facing down. You just want to add a line of hot glue on the very top and bottom of the piece and place it face down over the opening, and you want to get them kind of snug together. Now 10 of them should fill this gap perfectly without any errors, so this is what it will look like when it's all put together on the front. So the next space we're going to be working on is the opening for our actual calendar. This is where our actually tumbling tower blocks and our paint sticks will come into play. So we're going to lay our 6-piece block sets around the opening on the bottom and the 2 sides, and these will act as a guide and a spacer for our calendar. So I'm just going to take a calendar and place it and center it right on the opening, and this will be kind of a guide to see how long it is. Now you don't need an actual calendar to do this. You can use an 11 by 11 piece of cardboard or cardstock just for a guide. So now that that calendar is there, I'm just going to start adhering those tumbling tower block pieces on the bottom first, and then add one on each side. Now it doesn't have to be flush against the calendar. You really want a tiny gap between the calendar and the paint stir sticks. Now for this last one, you want to add your tumbling tower block on the other side. You want to wiggle the calendar just to make sure you have a little give in there, and then make sure that all those pieces are nice and secure. Now once those are in place, grab those paint stir sticks, and what we're going to do is lay them across the tumbling tower blocks, and we want to space them evenly all the way across. You just want to make sure that that bottom one is flush against your tumbling tower block to make that little holder at the bottom so your calendar does not slide through, and then space the other ones evenly. Then all you have to do from there is add hot glue on both ends of your paint stir sticks and apply them in place. Now I left gaps here just to hold it. You really don't need a solid closure in the back. You just need kind of a guide, but you definitely can get an extra pack of paint stir sticks if you don't want a slatted look and you rather have a solid look. So this final opening at the bottom will be an accent opening, and this is where your wire trash can or your gutter guard mesh comes into play. You can cut the mesh off the roll and fit over the hole. You can also cut it from the trash can with a pair of very sharp scissors or wire cutters to cover the hole as well. Now for the wire the gutter guard mesh, I'm just going to cut a piece that covers the opening and then trim it down to size where it doesn't overlap and show on the other side. Now this is really easy to cut with scissors, and it's also very durable. So, and a roll is 20 feet and it goes a long way. So to apply it in place, all I'm going to do is use my staple gun all the way around it. Just make sure you hold it taut into place, and you want to apply staple about every inch or so, and this is what it would look like when it is applied. So now we're going to take those crates. Now we're going to bond them side by side. Again, I'm using my wood stick hot glue, or you can use wood glue. It's all up to you. You want to bond them together side by side and press them firmly until that glue adheres, or when your wood glue dries. And now that they're bonded, we can apply them to the bottom of our piece where the mesh was applied. You want to make sure it's centered between them, and then when you have your location designated, you can apply that hot glue on there, a generous amount of that wood stick hot glue or wood glue of your choice, and just make sure the bottom is flush with the bottom of the frame as shown here. Now you just want to wait until that totally dries to continue. So now what we're going to do is work on the header. Now this header is great. You can add some of the metal words from the Dollar Tree if you like. There's so many options that you can do with this. You can also write something on there with a paint marker. Or for me, what I did is I just ran to my Cricut real quick and I cut out the word farmhouse. Now I did cut this out of removable vinyl, so I'm able to remove and replace it as I wish. But this was so easy to do, and I used a very basic font, and I'm just going to apply that on to that opening and then peel off that transfer tape, and now I have a farmhouse header on there that I can keep up for as long as I like and then remove it when I decide to change it out. Now, one of the last steps I'm going to do for cosmetic purposes is to cover up those nail heads because they show on the side. Now, this doesn't really bother me, but if you really want them to blend in, I am mixing some brown acrylic paint with a little bit of black, and I'm just going to match the color of my stain, and then I'm just going to dab inside that screw head with a fine tipped paintbrush, just blending it in to the rest of the piece, and that way they don't stand up as much, and when it dries, you have your completed piece. So now we're going to flip it over and we are going to insert a calendar. So I have one of these Farm Fresh calendars. I'm just going to choose an image that I want to display, and I love this honeybees one. I think it's so cute. Now the important thing is to keep that insert that comes with your calendar and make sure it's inside the middle of the calendar when you want to insert it, and then you just put it into the guides that you created with your tumbling tower blocks, and it slides right into place. And then once you flip it over, your calendar image will be perfectly displayed in your piece. And now just add your florals and greenery. Now this is a self-standing piece, but if you want this to hang, you can easily make that happen as well. So I love to use these D-rings. I got these from Amazon. I'll put the link in the description box below. And I'll also be using some picture hanger wire as well. Now what I'm going to do is put one of those D-rings on each side of the top of the back of the frame, and you just want to make sure they're at the same location on each side. Now these do come with little screws as well. You don't need pilot holes for these. These are fairly small screws. Just take your screwdriver and screw each one of them into the frame. Now once that's done and they're nice and secure in place, I'm going to grab that picture hanger wire. Now the reason I am using a wire with this is because there is a slight protrusion in the back because you have that calendar holder in there, and you want to have the flexibility of having your piece hang even without having a long nail in your wall to get to those D-rings. So all I'm doing is taking that wire, I am tying it around each D-ring, cutting it down, and then I'm going to twist the tail around the rest of the wire. Now you're just going to take your measurement, make sure your wire doesn't show outside of your frame, tie it in place, and then twist it around itself, and there you go. You have a wire to hang your piece. And here is this beautiful calendar holder on display, and I absolutely love how this turned out. Now these inexpensive wood pieces look amazing with the stain, and it really shows the beautiful detail. Now I really love how you can customize the header on this piece and switch up the calendar images with changing seasons, and then you can add beautiful flowers and greenery to the crates. Now there are so many ways to decorate and showcase this piece. Now what I really love is the warm and cozy fall season, and with the flip of a calendar, you can change the entire look. Now this wood finish perfectly accents the colors in this fall decor ensemble. And one of my favorite fall calendar images is this truck full of pumpkins. Now when you add fall leaves, it really brings the presentation to life. Now I love this entire look. What do you think? Now the great thing about this is it's not just for calendars. Now I wrapped a Dollar General placemat around the cardboard calendar insert, and now you can slide it right into the holder. Now you can do this for gift bags, some printouts, or family photos that you would love to display in this piece. Now this is great for a home decor piece, but this can also be customized for a family member too. So what I ended up doing is I painted a version white and added a child's name up top, and I inserted a calendar image and added some sweet flowers. Now this would make a great decor piece for a child's room and can be painted in any color or stain that you like. Now you can paint it an earthy green and use for a safari animal calendar for your little guy, or even paint it black and put muscle car calendar images for that man cave. Now the possibilities are endless, and even though I've given my special touch, there's never one as great as your own, so let me know what you think about these in the comments below. Now for this project, we're going to need 1 pack of these paint stir sticks from Lowe's for 98 cents. We're going to need a 1x2 piece of wood, and these are sold in 8-foot lengths at the Home Depot for about $1.78. We're also going to need a 1x4 piece of wood, and these are also sold in 8-foot lengths at the Home Depot for about $3.78. And we'll also need some 1/4-inch irrigation tubing, and this is sold in the plumbing aisle at the Home Depot, and you can get this in 50-foot and 100-foot rolls starting at about $4. Now what we're going to do is start off with our wood, and we're going to need 2 pieces of our 1x2 cut at 22 inches. 2 pieces also cut at 9 inches. Now for our paint stir sticks, we're going to cut 2 pieces at 10 inches, cutting off that handle. And we're also going to take 3 sticks and cut them into 6 4.5-inch pieces. Now for our 1x4, we are going to cut 2 pieces at 12 inches. So now that all our wood is cut, go ahead and gather all of it up, protect your work surface, and we will be staining this project. Now, I love to use my Jacobian stain by Minwax, but you can use any paint or stain that you like. Now I'm going to start with the longer pieces, and I'm just going to go ahead and apply an even coat of that stain over all of the surfaces of the wood, including the ends. Now I like using the rag so I can apply the stain and wipe it off at the same time, but if you use a brush or paint stirrer or anything like that, you want to make sure you wipe off any excess, and this is what one stick will look like. So now just repeat this for your other stick until both are fully stained, and then we can do our 9-inch pieces. And then after those are done, we are going to do our 12-inch pieces. And then we can go ahead and stain both sides of our paint stir sticks as well. Now for those pieces you cut off the end of the paint stir sticks, I'm going to take a few of those, and what I want to do is stain those as well, because I will be using these to bond the window panes together. So now that everything is stained, you want to allow it to completely dry. So now that everything is dry, we're going to gather up all of our pieces, and we can start the assembly of our shelf project. So I'm going to take the 2 long 22-inch pieces and 2 of the 9-inch pieces, and I'm going to sandwich them in between those 2 long pieces to form our frame's shape. Now I'm going to bond these together, and I am going to be using a wood stick hot glue, but you could definitely use a regular wood glue for this. And I'm just using my wood stick hot glue for that quick grab. Now I will be following up this project with screws, but this provides that quick grab I need to hold the frame together until I can secure it with a solid bond. Now once those 2 pieces on the ends are bonded together, go ahead and add that top portion, and now our frame is bonded at all 4 sides. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and grab our screws to complete this together. What we're going to do is grab some number 8 2-inch screws for this project. Now before we screw everything in, we do want to drill pilot holes, and I'm using a 7/64 inch drill bit, and I'm going to drill a hole in each corner. Now if you do have a Kreg pocket hole tool or brad nailer, please feel free to use those tools as well to bond these together. And then once all of our pilot holes are drilled, we can go ahead and add our screws into each one of those corners. And now our frame has all the screws in it, and you could touch these up with paint at the end, but our frame is now nice and solid. So we want to go ahead and set that to the side, and we want to grab all of our paint stick pieces to start working on our window paint. So I'm going to take those two 10-inch pieces and bond the flat sides together. You do want to make sure while you're bonding these together that the number side of your paint stir stick is facing you, which will be the back. So I did have a craft stick I had sitting to the side that was already pre-stained. You can go ahead and stain this in the beginning if you want to, but I'm using that craft stick to bond the center together to make one long stick for the center. Now once that center is joined, we are going to tape it down to the grid mat because we want to make sure it stays absolutely straight during the section where we put our panes into place. And now we're going to take our 4.5-inch pieces, and we first want to place 2 pieces on each side of that center, and then we're going to space these apart 4 inches, making sure the edge of that paint stir stick overlaps the center by only about 1/4 of an inch. Now we could have left our paint sticks whole to do this, but the handle would be showing in the project, and this was the best way I could figure to do this with paint stir sticks without that happening. So now that those are all designated in their positions, we are going to secure them together with a little bit of my wood stick hot glue as shown here, just making sure that we do overlap at about 1/4 of an inch along the center. Now once we do that first side, we're going to repeat this on the other side as well. Okay, so now that everything is nice and bonded together, we are going to take those patch pieces that we stained, and this is what we're going to use to bond the center of these sticks together so there's not a gap. And this does provide a little bit of extra security as well. So we're going to add one in the center over that gap to make sure they're secure. And as you can see here, our window pane piece is nice and solid. So now we're going to take our frame, we're going to place it face down, and we're going to place our window pane sections right on top of the back. And as you can see, each side overlaps the edge, so it's the perfect cut size. Just add a little bit of hot glue or wood glue along the edges, and then we're going to place that window pane right in the center, just making sure each side is overlapped equally, and that way you'll make sure all your panes are nice and even. Now once that initial bond is done, go ahead and flip it over, take a look. It is nice and centered and everything looks good. So we are good to go here. Now for added security, I love to take my staple gun and I'll go around and staple the edge of each one of those paint stir sticks that overlaps the frame into place. And this just makes sure that this piece is not shifting out of place nowhere. Okay, set to the side, and we are going to grab our irrigation tubing. So now I'm just going to take a piece, and I want to measure out a piece about 8 inches. Now we're going to go ahead and cut that 8-inch piece off. This looks like the piece we'll be working with mainly. So what I want to do is I want to cut a bunch of them, and I'll end up cutting 14 of these 8-inch pieces for this project. Now we will also need some for the corners, and so we'll need 4 4-inch pieces for the project. Okay, so we're going to flip that frame over with the good side down. Now before we add our tubing, we're going to have to mark the back, the center of each one of those squares. So what we're going to do is take our ruler and mark the center, which should be the 2-inch mark on all 4 sides of each one of those window pane squares. Now this is very important. I'm just using a chalk pen to do this, but once you do this, this will provide the perfect guide for you to apply your tubing and make sure that your design will be symmetrical when it's all applied. Okay, now that our marks are made, you can go ahead and grab any clips or clamps that you may need to hold it in place, but I like to give those tubes just a little bend because these are really flexible. And the first tube, as you can see, is going to be bonded at those 2 marks at the bottom of the frame. So what I'm going to do is add a line of that hot glue right underneath that line in the middle and on the inside of each one of those lines on the sides. And then I'm going to arch that tube all the way around, just making sure it's in alignment with those marks, and just kind of hold it in place for about 5 seconds or so until that it's nice and bonded. And then we're going to take a second 8-inch tube. We're going to do the same thing right next to it, just keeping in mind that that window pane is going to be the center of that arch, and that'll maintain the alignment throughout. Now what we're going to do is complete 3 of these arches on each side as shown here. There's going to be 3 along the top and there's going to be 3 along the bottom. So now we're going to take an additional 8-inch piece and we're going to make an arch in the center as shown here. So we're going to go ahead and add that glue along those marks the same way, and then we're going to add that tubing along that arch as well. Now what I did notice is as I was bonding this together on the center arches, it ended up being just a little bit too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clip off about 1/2 inch off the tubes for the center, because we want a blank side on the other side of that tube so we can match an adjoining tube on the other side. So keeping this in mind, I am going to trim down that 8-inch tube about 1/2 inch off each side, just making sure we keep uniformity here, and then adding some hot glue on each end and then bonding that into place, and it kind of forms a circle in the middle. Now this is what it looks like, and we want to repeat this on both sides of the center circle. Okay, so now we have this design so far. Everything is looking great. So what we want to do now is add an arch at the bottom or side of the frame, however you look at it. And we're going to take one of those 8-inch pieces and we're going to arch over that center as shown here. So we're going to go ahead and trim off some of that tubing just to make sure it fits nice and well. And we're going to align it with those lines. Go ahead and add your hot glue to those lines just like we did before, and then place that arch right on the side. Now we're just going to press and hold this into place until it's bonded, and then once it is bonded, we have that one arch on the side. And once that's done, just flip your frame around, and what we're going to do is do that again on the other side, adding another arch on that side for uniformity. Okay, so now those arches are added on each side as shown here. So our final step is to do the corners, and this is where our 4-inch tubes will come into play. So I'm just going to give them a little bend, and then I'm going to place it right in the corner, just joining itself up with the 2 ends of the existing tubes that are already there. So just add your hot glue at those corners, and then you could just easily place that 4-inch piece into place, and there's no trimming necessary. And once that first one is done, just repeat that for the remaining 3 corners. And here are all of our pieces all nice and bonded into place, and the design is complete. So once it is complete, just go ahead and add an additional bit of hot glue at all the seams. This is just for added security. I love to make my project super sturdy. And then after that, I like to follow up with a staple gun, just making sure that those tubes are nice and secure to the frame, and you'll know they are not budging and going anywhere. And here is everything all glued and stapled to the back of the frame, and it's nice and secure. Now when you flip it over, everything looks flawless and seamless. Okay, sit your frame to the side, and we're going to work on the shelf portion. So grab your 2 12-inch frames, and we're going to be bonding these down the center. So I'm going to add some wood glue, followed up with a little bit of wood stick hot glue for that instant bond along that side section, and then bond the 2 planks together. Just press them firmly until they're initially bonded. And once they're bonded, go ahead, and this is what they'll look like. So we're going to flip it over to the back side, and this is where I'm going to add some additional support. I had an extra paint stick sticking around, so I'm going to just trim this down about 1/4 inch off the edge so it doesn't overhang. And once I trim that down, what I'm going to do is lay that right across that center seam on the bottom side of the shelf. So again, I am going to take my wood glue, add a seam of that along with more of my wood stick hot glue, and I'm going to bond that paint stick right down that center seam, and this will add additional support to the shelf. And then I'm going to follow up, just touch it up with a little bit of that same Jacobian stain to blend it in. And once that's blended in, follow up with some 3/8 inch staples, and I'm adding 4 or 5 staples along that seam just to make sure that it's nice and bonded and secured together. Now you can use screws for this as well. Now once that does dry, we're going to add our frame to our shelf to the frame, and we're going to align that shelf with the top edge of the bottom of the frame as shown here. So we're going to start by adding a line of that wood glue along the side of the shelf, along of course with some of that hot glue for an instant bond, and then press it along the top of the bottom of your window frame until that bond sets. And once that bond has a firm set, we can just go ahead and flip over the entire frame, and we're going to be securing these with screws. Now to secure the shelf, I'm going to be again taking my 7/64 inch drill bit, and I am going to be drilling 4 pilot holes along the back of the shelf to put 4 screws in, and that should be definitely sufficient enough to place any decor, plants, vases, or whatever you choose to put on your shelf. And once those 4 holes are drilled, I'm going to take some 1.5 inch to 1 3/4 inch wood screws, and I'm going to apply 1 in each one of the holes. Now I always like to start by hand threading them in, because you do want to make sure that they go straight into the wood, and that way the security will be enhanced because it's not poking out of the other side of the wood. Okay, so once all 4 screws are into place, this is what it will look like. And as you can see, now the shelf is nice and secure to your window frame. So now we're just going to flip it over to the back. Now, the back of my project does stick out a little because of our iron look design. So what I did is I took 2 jingle blocks and I glued them together. These are the Dollar Tree tumbling blocks. And this is just to give it a little bump out so the iron part won't touch your wall. And this is an important step. You kind of want it to stick away from your wall so your planter shelf or your window shelf will hang evenly. So I'm just going to glue a double stack in each one of the top and bottom corners. Now if you don't have the blocks on hand, you can use scrap wood, anything that butts it out just enough, maybe a 1/2 inch or so, so your iron design will not touch your wall. And I'm putting this in all 4 corners of the back of the frame. And then once that's done, we are going to add our hanger. So I'm using some of this hanger wire. You can get this from the Dollar Tree or any hardware store. And I'm also using some of these 3/4 inch tiny screws that I will use to hold the wire in place. Now you really don't have to drill any pilot holes for this since this is a very small screw. But we do want to start by screwing these in about halfway into the back of the frame, making sure they're spaced at least 5 or 6 inches apart. Now once you screw each one of those screws halfway in place, you'll notice that they do stick out a little bit, and that is perfect for this step. So now we're going to take our wire, and what we're going to do is wrap it around each screw a couple times and then twist the end of the wire around itself to secure it in place. Now once you do that for the first screw, you're going to make sure you have enough slack in your wire, and then you're going to wrap that around a few times as well and twist the ends together. And now we can go ahead and secure the screw into place all the way as far as it'll go. And now your piece has a hang wire and it is ready to hang. And here is the final finished project, and I am loving how this window shelf turned out. Now this beautiful stained wood looks so great in this project, and it perfectly fits into my home decor. And we can't forget the star of the show, this irrigation tubing, which I absolutely love to use in my DIYs. Now this piece is super sturdy and it's ready for your vases, plants, or other decor that you may have in mind. You all have to let me know if you love this rich color of the stain, but you can also stain a lighter color or paint as well. Now if you love the light and airy look, how about a bright white window frame shelf piece? Now I do think that this is a great option as well, and it definitely gives me the farmhouse style vibes. Listen, I hope that you all enjoyed seeing these creations again, or for some of you for the very first time. I hope that you all are inspired to create your own home decor using inexpensive wood pieces as well. Now, if you love DIYs on a budget, please give this video a thumbs up and share this video with your friends. Make sure that you're following She's So CraftDee on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest for the latest news, sneak peeks, and giveaways. If you like videos like these and don't want to miss the next one, make sure you're subscribed by clicking that subscribe button below, or just click on my She's So Crafty logo on your screen and then click on the bell. It's absolutely free. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.